Segment Efes, Nikud Shalosh, Nikud Beit. Explanation. Consonants, Part 3. Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, and Samek. Here then is the next cluster of consonants that we'll be learning. First, Kaf. You'll notice that it's listed with a dagesh initially, and then a parenthetical form without the dagesh. When the dagesh is present, it has a hard K sound, K. When the dagesh is absent, it has a throaty sound like a cat hissing, with the sound Ch. This is the first letter where we're using the second column, namely final form. The letter Kaf, when it occurs at the end of the word, that is the final letter of a word, the final consonant, it will be shaped slightly different. That is to say, instead of having 3 sides to it, it has only 2 sides, and the vertical stem of it is elongated, actually crossing the lower line of writing. There's no change in the pronunciation of it, but it is rather a calligraphic feature adapting to the close of the word. We call this the final form. The next segment will introduce all of the consonants which are written in a slightly different way when they comprise the last consonant of a word. The next consonant in this cluster is Lamed. The important feature to keep in mind when writing the letter Lamed is that the beginning of this letter starts above the upper line of writing. The remaining consonants in this cluster then are Mem, and for Mem, once again, we have a final form. The final form is very much like a square, with a slight tag in the upper left-hand corner, followed by Nun. Nun also has a final form. In this case, it's a short horizontal stroke and then a long vertical stroke, once again going past the lower line of writing, just as the final Kaf did. The last consonant in this cluster is called Samech. Samech. This letter produces an S sound. Here are some guidelines from the handwriting practice portion at the end of Unit 0 that will help you develop good penmanship. First, the letter Kaf. You could see that it is somewhat like a squared-off horseshoe, pointed to the left. The final Kaf appears under it. Keep in mind that the vertical stroke must go past the lower line of writing. We call these final forms Sophite forms. Sophite means final. So the final Kaf would be called the Kaf Sophite. Next is the shaping of the Lamed consonant. Here, please note that the upper portion of the letter must cross the upper line of writing. Just like some letters have a portion that reaches below, this one must reach above. When writing the letter Mem, begin in the lower left and produce something of a triangle. From lower left to upper right in a diagonal fashion, then fairly straight down. At the baseline, complete this enclosure with a fairly straight line going to the point of origin in the lower left. Then add a tag in the upper left, as you see. When the letter Mem is the last consonant of a word, it takes a squared-off shape. It will be important to retain the angles of the squared-off Mem Sophite, the final Mem. If you do not, it could be confused with another letter, the Samech. The Mem Sophite does have a small tag in the upper left. The Nun is a very narrow letter, about the width of a Vav, although the lower horizontal bar can be slightly longer than the upper, and this helps us distinguish it from a compactly written cough, for example. When the last consonant in a word is the consonant nun, it lacks the lower crossbar and instead simply extends straight downward, crossing the lower line of writing. Once again, it is a very narrow letter, just as the traditional nun is. The last letter in this cluster is samech. Begin it in the upper left. Produce a horizontal bar at the top, and then continue your loop around, joining just inside where you began. There should be a slight tag protruding from the upper left. Once again, the distinguishing features for the samech are a flat top, a rounded bottom, and a protruding tag at the upper left. Take some time to practice writing these consonants.